Nigeria's Supreme Court will today deliver judgment in an appeal brought before it by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, against Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Alhaji Kashim Shettima of the All Progressives Congress, APC. A five-member panel of justices of the Apex Court, led by Justice John Okoro, fixed the date after all the parties involved adopted and argued their briefs in the matter.
3 days before the inauguration of the president-elect and vice president-elect, the PDP, in the suit filed July 28, 2022, claimed that Shettima's nomination as Tinubu's running mate was in breach of the provisions of Section 29, 33, 35, and 84 of the Electoral Act 2022. The party argued that Shettima's nomination to contest the position of vice president and Borno Central senatorial seat at the same time contravened the law. Now, while the counsel to the APC, Mr. Babatunde Ogala SAN, asked the court to strike out the case since the 180 days stipulated by law to hear the case had elapsed, Mr. Joe Agim SAN, who represented the PDP, argued that the issue of 180 days did not apply because the matter of double nomination was purely an illegality, and because illegality cannot stand, the court had the right to entertain the matter.
He also said that the Apex Court will determine whether there was double nomination and whether they had legal right to do so. News Central's Amadine Uyi was live at the Supreme Court, and he'll be bringing us, or he brought some updates in this regard. All right, we'll bring that much later before the show wraps up, but let's take the conversation away from there. As Nigerians count down to the inauguration of the APC president, or the APC presidential candidate and vice president-elect come May 29, what is the scorecard of the outgoing president and what should Nigerians remember him for? All these and more is what we will be dissecting now.
And eager to leave, expected also to vacate office in just a few days, Nigeria's outgoing president, Muhammadu Buhari, will leave citizens with memories of his 8-year tenure that was filled with both tough and good times. Currently, the country is struggling to survive a harsh economy mixed with a heated political system and more. Now, looking back to 2011, when the president came into power, or 2014, I beg your pardon, promises of tackling corruption, removing subsidies, ensuring Nigerians of job creation, and its focus on restoring peace amidst the increasing number of death casualties as a result of insecurity seem to have been a far cry from what his administration has achieved. However, the signing of the electoral bill into law and, a couple more, infrastructural developmental projects, might be one or two to give the government credit for. This morning, we are, of course, going to be speaking with Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, of course, on sharing his assessment of President Muhammadu Buhari's 8 years as president. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Osarogie. Thanks for having me.
All right. Of course, some of the things that I mentioned earlier, the 8 years was mixed with bad times or tough times and good times. There are people who would argue that the good times may not be very, very plenty, but from your perspective, would you say that the current administration, when the president always now and then says he has done his best, would you agree that they did their absolute best and there was nothing more that could have been offered, and so he should be commended?
As a teacher and who objectively marks with marking schemes based on the promises by the federal government of Nigeria, the Muhammadu Buhari regime that assumed office on May 29, 2015, based on their promises, based on the agenda that they set, and the outcome, I will score them 15%.
15?
15%. And 15%, is not even a pass mark. And let's look at it objectively. It's very funny when people try to keep on pushing the narrative out there. You talked about enjoyment. Those that actually enjoy this government are the few less than 1 million Nigerians, those in the political office and the private sector cronies attached to them. For the masses of Nigeria, they will wish no other government will be as atrocious, as incompetent, as destructive as the outgoing one. And I don't think there's any government that can be as bad as the one that is just phasing out.
Hopefully.
I pray, and that no, I pray, and of course, even if you look at the three candidates of the APC, Labour Party, and the PDP, we've seen their track record over time. I don't think any of them can be half as destructive, as atrocious, as nepotistic.
But the government, claims to have done a lot, with regards to infrastructure development, the fight against corruption.
Let's review it practically. Let's look at the indices. Let's look at the three cardinal agenda they set for themselves. First of all, they talked about tackling security. In this country, after spending over $25 to $30 billion from 2015 to 2022 on security, Nigeria today is rated as the most terrorized country in Africa, second most terrorized in the whole world. Before this government came to power, insecurity was largely narrowed to the northeast. Today, even the outgoing president's town of Daura and Katsina State is not spared. The number of poor people in Katsina State, the number of displaced people, the number of illiterate people in Katsina State are worse than what it was when he assumed power, his home state. To the northwest, it has become a heaven for bandits. And interestingly, to the southeast, that happens to be the safest region in Nigeria as at 2015. Today, the southeast is now competing with the northeast in terms of, go to Imo State, where I come from. Over 903 people have been murdered over the last couple of months, not less than 2 years, because of insecurity, because of banditry, because of our activities of the non-government. Even my own community where I come from, the Hube Okigwe Imo State, is largely deserted because of the activities of non-government and bandits sacking the communities and everybody. And interestingly, the cardinal objective and the obligation of any government is ensure protection of lives and properties, which this government has failed abysmally. On the economic front, the numbers are there. The Human Development Index, when this government took over power, inflation was a single digit. Today it's pursuing 23%. When this government came to power, we had just less than 76 million extreme poor Nigerians. Today that number is 98 million, and the number of multidimensional poor Nigerians is at 133 million. As at 2015, the number of kids out of school was put by the United Nations, UNESCO, at 10.5 million. Today is about 20.5 million. 10 more million kids have been taken out of school because of the incompetencies of this regime. Where do we even start looking at it? In terms of the economic well-being, the middle class had practically been eroded. A bag of rice when this government came to power was less than 10,000. Today it's at 2,000, despite the fact that I bragged about a rice revolution that ended up being...
He's spoken about closing the borders
being a cesspool of corruption. Go to CBN. Practically 70% of the money they claim they dished out for intervention in the rice value chain have yet to be recovered, because who are those that have even received it? Do we have a data on the list of those that benefited? That is the issue. So in terms of corruption, under this government, Auditor General of the Federation showed clear that over 170 million barrels of crude oil was unaccounted for. Nobody, till today, nobody has been arrested, nobody has been prosecuted. Under this same regime, for the first time in the history of Nigeria, oil theft went out of the roof. According to the NNPC DG, GMD, over $1.9 billion worth of crude oil are stolen every month. 22 billion. Never has this kind of thing ever happened in the history of Nigeria. Till today, nobody has been arrested, nobody has been prosecuted, and its high end is going. So where do we even look at it? On the debt side, when this government came to power, total debt profile in Nigeria was 12 trillion. Today it is 77 trillion and still counting. Interestingly, for the first time in the history of this country, the very law establishing the CBN was totally and flagrantly broken. 22.7 trillion created by way and means. Nobody has been arrested, nobody has been prosecuted, and they even eroded it to get the National Assembly, who has always become a rubber stamp for them, to approve it. So on the infrastructure, we claimed they've done wonderfully well in infrastructure. This government came to power, they promised us. If you look at the Economic Recovery Growth Plan, 2017 April to be precise, they told us clearly that they are going to do 2 million housing units and facilitate the expansion of about 1 trillion naira housing fund. Today, This is 26th May 2023. 2 years, a year past the due date of their promises. The only thing they could achieve out of the 2 million housing units is about 789 housing units.
But do we also discredit the trains that have come into
let's even look
at the roads. If you look at Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Aba-Port Harcourt Expressway, there are a couple of these roads that were in completely deplorable states in the past administration.
Osarogie, for the love of it, anybody that understands average, I'm not even talking about excellence, should never celebrate mediocrity wherever it is seen. Because that is one thing that we have seen ourselves do in this country. We embrace mediocrity, we celebrate mediocrity, and we dance with mediocrity. It was not so between 1960 to 1966, when we had Muhammadu Bello, Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and the Michael Obara in the helms of affairs. I'll give you talk about rail. In this same country, for 8 good years, 156-kilometer rail line at $1.9 billion, do the average sum. In this same Africa, Ethiopia and Djibouti started a rail project 2011, 759 kilometers across very dangerous, mountainous, atrocious terrain. They completed that rail project within 7 years at $4.2 billion. Divide $4.5 billion by 759 kilometers. Divide $1.96 billion that Nigeria used to build 156 kilometers. It will give you the average cost of doing that kilometer of standard road project. The Ethiopian one was even more sophisticated because it has electricity embedded in it. And they did it and delivered it in less than 7 years. 759 kilometers of rail project. No. And we are celebrating 156 in a country that requires average of at least minimum 12,000 kilometers that can be done in 12 years if we have focused leadership in place.
Yeah, well, so the government would argue, that we might, discredit, and of course complain about the cost of carrying out those projects here and there, but we should still give them, some kudos for at least pulling it off when the previous administrations were not able to do same. And they would always also mention Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Aba-Port Harcourt, and maybe Enugu Onitsha and some of all those places that they have done, fix those roads. So are you then arguing that that's not enough? Of course, put side by side with the amount of money that has been taken as loans in the last 8 years.
We are in the same Nigeria. Sometimes I sit down and ask myself this question. Do those guys from time to time look at history? Look at between 1959 to 1966. Go and look at the records of the Northern Regional Government, Western Regional Government, and Eastern Regional Government between 1959 to 1966. Look at the stellar and record accomplishment of these men of yesteryears, our forebears, with the little resources they had without even the crude oil. We talked about education here. In this same country, 129 billion was wasted. They said they were feeding school children when we were in lockdown under COVID.
Yeah.
You forgot that Obafemi Awolowo, may God bless the soul of that great sage, fed 430,000 people in school under compulsory free education. The old Western Nigeria was ahead of everybody. See, let me tell you, Osarogie, that the government before them scored 10% and they scored 15. Does not make it a pass mark. Yeah. You can't thump your chest when your mates in other parts of Africa.
Yeah.
Look at the issue. See, the truth remains. Nigeria has grossly underperformed under this regime. And I pray and sincerely pray to God that no other regime coming after this will be half. Because if I say worse than this or as worse as this, then we are done. Half as worse as this outgoing government.
Wow, it puts, and it's one of the things that we're going to bring in Olive next. One of the things I always love to question is, what Nigerians use, what are the, ways that Nigerians rate the performance of a government, because you never really see Nigerians as frustrated as you'd expect that they would be. But we'll take a short break. When we come back, the conversations continue this morning. Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We're having a quick review of the last 8 years by President Muhammadu Buhari and the current administration. And this morning we have with us Nnaemeka Obiaraeri. Olive, of course, has a lot to get off her chest, I guess.
Yes, so many angles have been highlighted, and thank you so much, Mr. Nnaemeka, for joining us this morning. You've touched on many conversations. You've touched on security, and you've touched on education lightly, but I'd like us to touch on education. Interestingly, both of them are somehow interrelated. According to SBM Intelligence, we had reports that at least 1,400 students were kidnapped, forcing about over 11,000 schools to be shut down, housing over 1 million children. Now, you also made reference to UNESCO statistics, talking about how we have about 20 million out-of-school children. Whilst we're looking at these disadvantages and looking at the fact that ASU has also been on strike a number of times during the last administration, we had the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, saying that he had no idea about the education sector before he was appointed by the president. But on the bright side, he was able to make reference to invite appoint a number of professors and invite them to come and help him in making policies that would improve and help them achieve success. Would you say that the success was visible to the average Nigerian? And what would you say, the education sector in the last administration was like? What are some of the positives as well as the negatives that you've been able to highlight?
I take us back again to history. Between 1960 to even to 1980, now people were coming from the United Kingdom, from South Africa, from Zimbabwe, from Ghana, from all over the world to acquire education, tertiary education, Unilag, University of Ibadan, Ife, and Nsukka. Today, Nigerians are moving in droves, even to nearby Benin Republic, to acquire education. The records are there. For the first time, students were at home for almost, not the first time, it has always been a consistent thing in Nigeria, for almost a year, because the federal government of Nigeria could not fulfill the agreements with ASU. At the primary level, basic education level, most of our primary schools, most of our secondary schools, visit them. Some of us attended public schools. Today, there's nobody, not even a middle class, that can afford that will put his or her child in a public school. The only places you can attend public school, some of the few states like Abia, like Anambra, like Lagos State, is where you can get one or two good-looking public school where you can enroll people. So look at Zamfara, for example. Zamfara could not enroll their children to write WAEC. That's the same state. They couldn't pay 1 billion for the kids to write WAEC. That's the same state where the governor is being accused of stealing 70 billion and is having a brick bat with the EFCC chairman. And we have a president who looks ungratefully. Nothing has been done. Under Obasanjo, it was not like that. In terms of fighting corruption, Obasanjo fought it headlong. It was not Obasanjo for the first time that an IGP of police, his kingsman, Tafa Balogun, was arrested and prosecuted. We have never seen that kind of thing again in Nigeria. All we have is, see, on the issue of health, on the issue of petroleum, look at our petroleum. You see, the other day they were in Lagos to commission Dangote refinery that was started in 2015. And all of them were there. And I could just imagine the shamelessness of the elites and the political leaders. This same government promised us that they will fix the refinery that's nothing like subsidy. From 2015 till now, after squandering 1.3 trillion by way of losses and failed turnaround maintenance program, they could not repair any of the refineries. I remember some of these refineries were built. The three of them were actually built in less than 15 years. Obasanjo built one in 3 years. Gowon built one in 4 years. Babangida built one in 4 years. Military men that did not have any economic training. Yet, under a civilian regime, 8 good years wasted. They could not fix any of those refineries. But these guys came to Lagos to come and celebrate the construction of a refinery in under 7 years by a single individual. And this is the kind of mindset we have in Nigeria. And somebody will still go on TV and say, oh, we did well. These are clear examples of leadership failure. These are clear examples of irresponsibility. And I say it again, I bear repeating it again. The worst mistake we make is that we do not sincerely tell truth to the power. And that is why we have a lot of hangers on. People in the media keep on clapping for them who cannot interrogate the kind of thing that happened. Looking at Nigeria from 1960 to 1980 and the kind of things we accomplished and the kind of things that we have now. In 1980, the number of poor people in Nigeria was 4 million people. In China, it was 759. Today, China has existed all the poor people within their rank, living few. In Nigeria, we've moved them from 4 million to 1.3 million. And it has been progressive. Every regime turns out worse than the other. And we do not see that something is fundamentally wrong. And we trace it clearly to the constitutional and physical framework of Nigeria. We keep on pursuing and addressing the symptoms rather than looking at the root cause of our woes, and which is the constitutional and physical deformities that have allowed the worst of us to rule the best of us. And until we address those foundational issues, amend our constitution, take it back to what it was between 1960 to 1963, where governance and leadership was part-time, where we would not have convoy of 67 vehicles following one governor, where people worked on merit. We had then in parliament the richest man in Africa, Salius Odumegwu. He was not in parliament to go and make money or whatever. He was there to make good laws. He was chairman of 15 corporations. Today, we have people in parliament who will approve anything as long as they're able to extract little from, because they were ab initio, either jobless or fully compromised. If we can go back to what worked for us in 1960 to 1966, resource control, where the regions and the states will produce based on their own capabilities and contribute to the center 50% and keep 50% for themselves. If we have the kind of resource control, decentralized autonomy, do you know that things were so good at the regions that Muhammadu, who was leader of the NPC, by right would have been the prime minister, but he refused because the regions were powerful and were responsible, and the center far below. So we must look back to those golden days where governance will be a call to serve and not a do or die affair where people carry ballot possible because they see the revenue to go and loot and steal when they don't have competencies. And I pray that the coming government they've destroyed the soul of Nigerians. Even looting had become in their DNA. I pray when they loot, they should invest back in Nigeria.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring you in on the coming administration, because I'm sure that we still have time to have people who are very much in support of the past administration or the current administration, to share their views on what they think that the government did exceptionally well at and why Nigerians should celebrate the Buhari government. I'm sure that there's still views like that. And of course, if you remember, on the 20th of May, there was a news paper headline on the Vanguard that showed that 63,000 plus Nigerians were killed in just the current administration's government. It said 63,111 were killed in Buhari's 8 years. It's part of the things that would be seen as a scorecard of the current administration's government. What would we expect from the incoming administration? There's still a tribunal, of course, but there will be a swearing in on the 29th, I believe. What can we expect from the Bola Ahmed Tinubu government? Should Nigerians be hopeful at all? And remember, this is a government a candidate who didn't speak to the people, at any point.
Let me be frank and sincere with you. In as much as I still believe that the Labour Party candidate will regain his mandate, but I want to tell us this: the Bola Ahmed Tinubu government will not even be 10% as terrible as this Buhari government. I'll give it. You just gave the example about somebody who was made Minister of Education who had no idea about how to reform education. But Buhari nepotistically made him the Minister for Education just because he just wants to satisfy nepotistic instinct. Tinubu cannot do such. Tinubu has a record of picking out smart people to work with him. Let us give him that. I don't think the incoming government will be as terrible as the outgoing government. For one, Tinubu will not appoint somebody who does not have any understanding about education as an education minister. Tinubu will not appoint somebody who has no knowledge about oil and gas as petroleum minister. Buhari made himself petroleum minister, yes, under him.
Even if there are questions about his own education.
No. To be honest, for somebody to work, let us face fact. For somebody to work as a treasurer in Mobile, Nigeria, Mobile is not a place where you get employment the way Buhari appoints people. You must have passed through interview process and all those stuff. And of course, those who knew him way back then said that he's an excellent man in terms of understanding his job. So let us give it. The only worry we have is about his age, about his health. That is the only worry people should. But in terms of mental acuity, in terms of understanding administration, in terms of being able to employ and put in the right people at the right places, it's under Tinubu that he brought Ben Akabez and made him economic commissioner in Abia in Lagos State. Ben today is the DG budget in Abuja, and Ben is one of the most excellent investment bankers that has come out of Nigeria.
I mean that's 1999. We're talking about 2023.
No, that's what I'm saying. I said, see, the truth is why I believe that this government is a continuation of the old one. I'm not expecting any miracle. I just pray that we should brace up, tighten up our belt, and pray that God will help us. But in terms of competencies, in terms of comparabilities, I don't think there's anybody can compare Tinubu with Buhari. There's no basis because we've seen them. The Nigerians were aware that this government will be as it is. Some of us saw it coming. Because if you look at the track record of the guy when he was president between 1983 to 1985, you saw what he did. He came in and Nigeria went into austerity. So there was no way you could expect a man who left power in 1985, never attended any institution, never acquired any knowledge. He had 159 cows, and those 159 cows never added any to themselves for 16 years. And you expect the man to come and rule a complex Nigeria? We saw the disaster coming and we embraced it. I don't think Tinubu will be like that, please.
Mr. Nnaemeka, we will run out of time, but as quickly as possible. In the last global terrorism index, Nigeria has moved 2 steps up the ladder. That might seem like some good news to share, but do you think that we should expect that insecurity would become a thing of the past in the incoming administration? And I ask this because the current administration came into power on the promise of being able to deal with insecurity that was inherited from government to government. So do we think that we would not have conversations about banditry and terrorism and kidnapping, once we have, because they are starting to make these promises as well?
Let me tell you, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is an apostle of state policy. He has always believed in it. I can tell you, restructuring of Nigeria will kickstart. I have no doubt that he will restructure Nigeria. He can easily. He has the capacity to do it if he wants to do it. If he can be his own man. I'm sure he will support state police. He has always been an apostle of state police, and I've always said this: it's very easy to tackle insecurity in Nigeria. Take security back to the communities. Between 60 to 1966, we never had the kind of insecurity we had because we had regional police. Regions had their own police that were efficiently run, and it is the local people that understand how to protect themselves. Regional groups like Amatokun will be empowered on that. Don't take it for granted. I can tell you from June 1st. Look at what is going to happen. Because one, I don't see why you will allow bandits and terrorists to be walking around with AK-47 rocket-propelled launchers, and you will not allow the Amatokun to carry their own AK-47, and some of those security will be able to tackle them. I think Tinubu will address this. I'm very, very sure. If they pursue and allow the communities, the states to have their own vigilante group, train them properly, fund them properly, help them to be able to gather intelligence and equip them with the right arms. I tell you, in 6 months, insecurity will be a thing of past in Nigeria.
Please be as brief as possible with this. 20 seconds max. The tribunal and their ruling today on, of course, the double nomination of Shetima.
Just like Olisa Bakoba said, I do not have confidence in the Nigerian judiciary.
All right.
I lift up my hand. Whatever comes in, our faith is in the hand of God.
All right. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, thank you very much for stopping by this morning. And of course, Olive, thanks also for being a part of the conversation. This is where we wrap up for today, a Friday morning on Breakfast Central. Thank you for staying with us all through the week. I am Osarogie Ogbonmwan. See you next week.
I'm Olive Emodi. We'll see you at the time when we're meeting. We're preparing for the counting down to the swearing in of the next government. Have a wonderful week and stay safe.